Okay, so what does it mean to be trauma-informed? It's a really big word. But for me, where I work inside prisons and institutions, working with more severe mental health issues, I find it is so important to enter these facilities from a neutral space, being really, really open to that. Trauma comes with so many different individual expressions, right? And really being aware of my own trauma that I'm carrying with me from my life, and also my own reactions and my own bias, and also my own privilege, because I enter facilities where people are confined as well. So it's like such a vast complexity in the populations that we serve inside the Prison Yoga Project. But you know, like, coming from the standpoint from what can we do with the trauma-informed practice, and for me it's a practice that brings hope and empowerment. I feel that is a very important part of the practices we can share. And you know, bringing in not only yoga on a rubber mat where we do warrior sequences and all of the traditional yoga aspects with breathing and meditation, but you know, bringing in practical tools that we can use in our everyday life. And by using those small tools, it can bring a sense of empowerment. And I find that it's really, really beautiful to see how small practices can make such a huge difference. So we have a good saying in the Prison Yoga Project, which is maximize benefits and minimize harm. So being trauma-informed, we also know that the body is affected in a certain way, even though we are all reacting in a different way. But some might be hyper-aroused from something, and the same practice, another person might be hyper-aroused, right? Yeah. Because it's such a vast difference. So we learn how to be, you know, from the standpoint of samastitihi. In the yoga practice, it's like neutral stance, right? To be able to observe what's going on in our students in the room and see what can we do to titrate, and how can we kind of see that we can empower this group with different practices and still not trigger anyone. So I feel that that is one important part, but to see that everyone is unique, right?
Yeah, and meeting them where they are.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love what you said about being aware of your own biases and being aware of your own traumas when you walk in the room. And your story just now, it reminded me, I remember when I was first teaching in residential treatment centers, you got a lot of those different responses around hypoarousal and hyperarousal. And also, a lot of the students I was working with at that time were pretty medicated for various reasons, sometimes for anxiety, sometimes for depression, sometimes for other things. So I specifically remember, you know, I was a fairly new yoga teacher at that time, and I was a bit insecure and not fully confident in my own teaching. And I remember I was teaching one day, and I had this student that fell asleep. And then I was like, well, okay, you know, maybe I just wasn't engaging enough. And so I came in the next week, and I came in, and then sure enough, he was out again. And it happened a few weeks in a row, and I would like go home and beat myself up around it. I was like, well, maybe, you know, I seem to connect with everybody else, but this particular student, he just is totally uninterested. What's wrong with me? Blah, 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 blah. And that's what I think, I came to learn, one, that he was on medication, and two, the topics we were covering at that time were pretty, like, brought up a lot for him personally. This is a student I worked with for months and probably over a year. So it was bringing up a lot of the experiences from his childhood, a lot of the experiences that had triggered his eating disorder. And what a trauma-informed lens gave me over years after this experience was the ability not to take that personally.
For sure, yeah.
And the ability to see that reaction and know, and to be curious about it, and to know it might be about me, but it might have nothing to do with me. To be curious, to be an inquiry. In psychological circles, you call it transference and countertransference. So you have what students project onto you is their transference, but your countertransference is what you project onto them, the story you tell yourself about it.
And when you're telling this story, it brings really up something very important, I find, and that is that being trauma-informed is offering an all-inclusive practice, right? So sometimes in the yoga world, it's a lot of talk about bliss, you're going to be healthy. It's like when you do yoga, you're going to be happy automatically. But I feel these types of yoga practices can embrace our shadow side and learning how to deal with that side, both us as facilitators, right? How can we manage to live with and be with the pain and the suffering that we're all holding and being okay with that? That is a part of our existence. So sometimes a yoga practice can be almost an avoidant, like pushing away what kind of hurts. It's not, and making that acceptable, that it's okay if it comes up, strong emotions. I mean, it can be a part of the process. But here you have some practical tools for self-regulation and to come back to your body to kind of release and discharge and come back into balance. And I find that very beautiful, and that's the empowering part as well.
Yeah.
And we do hold that capacity, and the people that we encounter in our programs, they are really strong individuals, right?
Yeah.
But to remember that being a whole individual also includes holding that, what we've been through in life and what we're going through in life as well.
Yeah, the term that keeps coming to mind is spiritual bypass, right?
Yeah,
So often we
sure.
want to make it blissful. It also makes me think of, we've got so many people that have come to our organization to become facilitators, to work with people with eating disorders, and often it's driven by a really heartfelt desire to serve, to help others, to give back what has been given to them. But also sometimes there's this shadow side of either wanting to not have to deal with their own stuff. And so, okay, I'm going to go and help these other people rather than dealing with my own, sense of unease or my own eating disorder sometimes. Or it's coming from almost, and this isn't, I don't mean this to be judgmental, an egoic need to be helpful, to be a healer, to be all of that. So part of, I think, being trauma informed is knowing those parts of you, seeing them, and also instead of like just trying to compartmentalize, go like, what part of me really wants to heal? Where is that coming from in me?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. It's important. It's a very important journey in the way we, as you said, with the counter transference and the transference, that we are nervous systems that are exchanging an experience. So I mean, we are processing at the same time as the people in front of us in our classes, right? I find it as a very beautiful way of approaching yoga, but as well being very open in front of the unique realities we have in front of us as well. Because I work with schizophrenia and psychosis, and it's been the most amazing work I've done, because learning how to see the different realities. There is like 20 different realities in the room, right? And it's like, who am I to tell you your experience? What I feel in my body is not necessarily what you are feeling. But here we can meet in a kind of, how do you say, it's like a unique experience that we're sharing together, even though we come from different backgrounds and different views of this reality right now. But what connects us is that we find ways of moving and breathing together that connects us beyond words, right? Yeah. And it's like it's a practice filled with compassion and allowance, that you find your shape that certain day, and the person who is facilitating also knows that we do have a nervous system that can be dysregulated, so we avoid certain practices like fast-paced breathing, or just to not trigger anything until the person feels more strengthened from the inside, and then go out there, not to put any limits as well, so but in the beginning, before you see stability in the group, that kind of keep it contained and safe and predictable, and allowing this space for everyone to be there.
Going back, I love what you said about, meeting a person where they are and allowing their shape to, that's physical, allowing a person to take the shape that they need to in a pose, but it's also a metaphor, right? Allowing, and to me, I guess I hadn't thought of this until our conversation. one aspect of being trauma informed is play.
Of course, it's so important.
It's being playful.
Yeah.
It's meeting what's in front of you. It's throwing the script out and not being so prescriptive and like, well, I'm going to teach these poses these days, or this, I'm going to help this person on this journey. It's coming and meeting what's right there in front of you and being in the present moment enough to flip to meet a person in 20 different realities.
And basically, at the end of the day, playfulness is the total opposite from trauma, right? If we can't be playful, then
Yeah.
it's important.
Yeah.
Thank you.